Hi there, it's Denise Eckert. And I love coming on here and sharing different practices and techniques to help you lower the stress in your life. And today I've got the opportunity to talk to Kristi Sullivan, and she's a human design and self-care expert. She's a speaker and lead author of the best-selling Amazon book, Stop Overworking and Start Overflowing: 25 Ways to Transform Your Life Using Human Design. She hosts a virtual community for spiritually minded females to create better wellness, improve relationships, shift mindsets, and manifest more success, wealth, and freedom to live their best life by design. Well, welcome, Kristi.
Denise, it's nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. So now what inspired you to do this type of work?
Mm. I discovered this about 8 years ago now, and it was like a light bulb for me. And I think of it as similar to when I discovered yoga. I thought, oh my gosh, this is fascinating. And not many people knew what yoga was or were doing like a normal practice. They were like, oh, that yoga thing. The same thing happened with human design, and not many people knew about it in my connections and network. And when I started to talk about it, I would get so excited and be like, I got to run your chart and tell you what I know. And just was really eager to share something that could be just this amazing transformational tool. I felt the same way when I discovered yoga. So that was one sign for me. I was like, oh, something is here. And as part of experimenting with my human design, I started to allow more opportunities I was open to opportunities coming my way. And someone asked me to speak about human design to one of their groups. That sparked me to then offer readings to people and to start teaching more. I just followed those breadcrumbs and knew that because those opportunities were there, I knew this was the right thing for me to be doing and the purpose for me.
Now, what's the benefit of knowing your human design?
Yeah, good question. And for those who are new, have never heard of human design, it's your energy blueprint based on your birth date. And you can think of it as like astrology on steroids, or going even deeper than what you would normally get through a personality assessment or a communication style tool. This allows you to understand who you are at your core and your energy, how your energy operates. And the reason that's important is because when we're in the head and making decisions or choices in life from the head, typically what we're doing is coming from a place of conditioning or what we were taught or should do or what our family passed down to us. And yet we are really unique beings here. And so when we understand something like a human design blueprint that we have within our body and within this human form that we are, it starts to help to reveal to us the things that we actually are meant to do more naturally, the ways that we align with our energy instead of trying to force ourselves to be a certain way or do things a certain way that may not be serving us. So it really helps you understand yourself at a deeper level and then to be able to navigate things and to make choices to maybe improve your relationships, to choose a better career and purpose for what you're doing in life. And it really, I think, helps people validate who they are and feel really more seen and heard.
Now, how do we find out what our human design is? Like, what information do we need?
So you can find a lot of places online, including my website. You can go to download a free chart, but do need to know your birth information. You need to know your date as well as time of birth. That's helpful, and location. And I've had people who say, I don't know my time of birth. So I really recommend that people do a little digging if they can uncover their birth certificate or ask maybe family what time of day they were born, to get some idea. I've also worked with people in testing it out using a pendulum and or muscle testing. That's another way that you can figure that out. But once you have that information, you simply input it into this human design software that exists, and it's going to be based on the alignment of the planets and entities on that day. It takes into account some quantum physics. And so your birth date's important. It really will show some unique things about who you are.
Yeah, I was really disappointed because I think it was a while ago that I did another human design episode and I left that episode and I'm trying to find out my birth time and it was like, nope. Like the hospital doesn't even exist anymore. And the people that were around, it's okay, so 60 years ago, where were you on May 2nd, 1964? It's like, no. And I did get my long form of birth certificate and it didn't have the date on it. I was so disappointed.
Yeah, and some countries and places don't list the birth time. Working with somebody, and I know in astrology, there are people who also can do this to help you tune into what's probably the window of time. Before we started recording, I said, I would love to pull up your chart. And since you didn't know your time, what I did was I tested a few different times to see what changed. Sometimes, like in the span of a day, we could look at your energy type, for example, which is a great starting point if you're new to human design, looking at what's the type in your design, your type of energy. And if that stays the same throughout the day, then you're one of those five energy types in the category that you are. But in your case, it shifted a little bit. So I just simply said, what resonates? And when we do a little bit deeper reading together one-on-one, or if you were to do more research on your own, you would look at different aspects and say, what is the way that I tend to operate when I don't have an agenda, when I don't have like programming that's taught me to do this? Like what turns out to be very natural for you? And having that conversation, we uncovered that you are potentially the energy type called the manifester. And that's one of five energy types that exist.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and I can go a little bit further into that. And what I love, I want to say is, in fact, if this does resonate that you're a manifester, that's only 9% of the population. So it's a rare energy type. There are five types. This is a great starting point to looking at your design, the overarching energy that exists for you and how you operate on a day-to-day basis. And they're really categorized into two camps, one called the generator types. There's generators and manifesting generators. And what really brings those types together is their sacral energy is operating pretty consistently. So throughout the day, they wake up and maybe have a lot of energy to do things, to be productive, to do projects and tasks. And they're really meant and to do that. Their energy is to build things, to run and do things that have been delegated to them, tasks or to-do lists they might have for the day. The other 30%, and that makes up 70%, so 30% of the population are non-generators, non-sacral beings or energy types. And this includes you as the manifester. Also, projectors and reflectors are the other two categories. And the difference is not that they can't work as hard. They're not meant to. Their energy is meant to work in shorter spurts and to do things in a very different way because rather than being the builders and the taskmasters, these other three types are more meant to either bring things forward, look at the bigger picture, maybe initiate things. Manifestors are really well known for like their creativity, their downloads, and then they go ahead and start projects, but then they delegate it to the generators. And they really need to be mindful of downtime and taking rests in between their work spurts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
And does that sound familiar to you?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm one of these people too that when I'm working on a project, once it becomes repetitious, I have no interest. And I will end up gearing somewhere else where it's something else that's new.
Yeah. And that's great to notice. And when that resonates, when you recognize it, and especially when we're younger, we're so molded by things in school. But when we're more an adult and wiser, we recognize this feels better to me to do things this way, to not have to necessarily follow through. Manifestors are really meant to initiate things. You're the spark of creativity for us, especially for generators who are like, I'm ready to go build something, do something. And working with the manifester, like in a business, would be great because the manifester would be like, today is the day we're going to launch something, right? And then they work together in tandem. And when it's comes down to we recognize that we have different energies and we're not all meant to be fitting in the same mold or doing things the same way, then we can really start to bring out our gifts and what will really benefit others. You sparking creativity in me would be wonderful. I love to respond to things as a generator, respond to ideas or inspiration.
Yeah. And I know when I first started in the workforce, there was a couple of positions that I got. And I remember one, it was an accounting position. And it was good until I knew what the job entailed. I liked the training. And then after the training, there's no way I could see myself doing this. Like I could be the trainer, I could be training other people, but for me to sit there day after day after day doing accounting, no, not me.
Yeah,
Designing new ways of doing it.
and what's happening is if we're doing things, let's say for a paycheck, just for stability, security, because we've been taught that, right? We've been taught to be in a system where we want a job that's stable and secure and longevity. But then we end up burning out if it's not really part of our passion or really serving us, even as generator types, if we're not doing the right kind of work that lights us up. If we're burning out or overwhelmed, feeling either frustrated or the manifestors, if they feel this like something that's not right and it turns into really irritation or anger, those are all in human design signs, great signs that something's not in the alignment for your energy. And when we tune in, listen to that and start to perhaps use human design to help make the different choices of, well, where really is best for my energy to be? What should I say yes to? What should I be sure I'm saying no to? And that's part of self-care too, is knowing what to say yes and what serves us, what's best for our energy. And I know that's important to what you're doing is self-care. So that's really how human design can be helpful.
That makes a lot of sense because I remember my first job, I worked for the bank. And honestly, I could not even get to work. Like I was like, oh my God. I remember one year, I think I lasted there 2 years because I was programmed to get the job, move up the ladder, get my pension check at the end of my life, right? And the one year I went in for a review and I had 90 days off. And then after that, I ended up getting involved in conference planning, where you're constantly working on new projects, you're working on new ideas, you're doing something different every day, dealing with problems. I don't think I ever missed a day of work. I loved it. And it really makes a difference on being in the right spot. Because how many hours do we spend working?
Yeah, exactly. It's so much of our life, and we're taught that way. We have a system where a job is something we usually need for our livelihood and also just to fulfill our purpose and what we feel our gifts can be used. But to recognize that, especially in a business or a company, that people have different energy, and that when we are able to recognize that and see how to work together and not to try to either work in competition or also even work where, okay, you have to do it this way or that's not the right way. There is no right or wrong in human design. It's feeling into what's the best way for us to coexist, to collaborate.
Yeah. Now, for anybody that's listening and they're feeling uneasy or bored or robotic, what they're doing right now, what are the steps that they can take to make a change in their lives?
That's a great question. And awareness is really big, especially right now as there's a lot of shifts happening. We look back at maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or even generations back, we're doing things differently. We're evolving. And so having an awareness to say, okay, what are the perhaps places in my life that I would like to make a change? Understanding, for example, your human design, like exploring that. Maybe it's a book that you're reading. Maybe it's trying out some new self-care and ways to help your stress level. But when you address your energy on the inside, your outside will shift. So that's very key, is that you can look for information on the outside and books to read or self-care to do, but it's also really key to look inward and say what maybe in me needs to shift, what could support my energy in a better way when I wake up and take my first breaths of the day. Like what's important, and doing self-care, the inner, deeper self-care is really key to that. That's, I think, part of why when I use human design and share it, I always bring it back to, are you doing the things to help your energy thrive through the day? And it may not be in that job, for example, but it could be after you're done, you are taking time for yourself. You are making space for even just little bits of self-care throughout the day.
Now, can you elaborate a little bit more on what you mean by inner self-care?
Yes. So outer self-care is the, oh, let me take a day to myself, let me take some time off. Inner self-care is really getting to know yourself, getting to understand that programming or conditioning, the ways that you tend to do things and the habits. Are they from somewhere else? Have you picked up ways of doing things that I know that's what I've been taught? What happens when you maybe question that or take a look and say, is that really meant the best way for me? Also, our experiences in life, and oftentimes we talk a lot about trauma these days, that there may be experiences and things that really also create self-limiting beliefs or habits that aren't serving you. And those are deeper things to work on. We used to, I would say therapy evolved as a great way for like you to look at inner self-care, but there's other things too now that exist. There might be things like I use in some of the groups that I work with, EFT tapping, that's really important, or other modalities that kind of get to that subconscious programming that we can't just change by going to read a book. It needs to be some more inner diving into inner world shifts that we need to make.
Awesome. So now I understand you have a free HD chart. Can you talk about that? What does that mean?
Yeah, so the website that I have, if you are new to human design, you can go and input your information to get a free chart to see your design and get that energy type that we talked about earlier and other properties of your chart. There's a lot of information online. You can go to many websites to also look that up. And also on my website, you can purchase a report, a written report, if you want to read more about your design. And you can also book a reading with me to do one-on-one over Zoom. But starting with the free chart is the best place.
Wonderful. So now we're going to be wrapping this up. What are your final words of wisdom to the audience today?
I think it's that we're in a very important time right now where people are seeing things shifting, and to really know that maybe stepping away some of the ways that we used to do things, or in your life, things that are no longer serving you, what though can you start to maybe do differently? What is that inner self-care that's really important? And just to pay attention, bring some awareness to it, pay attention, and know that there's like-minded communities that you can get support from. So that's also important. Things like this podcast, really important to like stay in tune with.
Wonderful. So I understand you have a Facebook group. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. And if folks want to stay in touch with me and learn more about human design, as well as events that I'm hosting online, as well as in person, they can come to my Facebook group, which is Kristi's Human Design and Self-Care Community.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Kristi. Great information. And it's so nice that we're not plugged in like little pegs in robot boxes that we used to be. And we're becoming more aware of, yeah, where we can shine.
So true. Thanks, Denise.
So just leaving you a gentle reminder to slow down and enjoy life. And I'll see you in the next episode. Go.